Well, good afternoon and good morning, everyone, and welcome to session 5 of the AMBA and BGA Accreditation Forum. During this session, we'll be discussing AMBA and BGA joint accreditation, and I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Stoddard, Director of Accreditation and BGA Services at AMBA and BGA, and very shortly he'll be joined by Percy Marquina, Director General of CENTRUM PUCP Business School, and Hanna-Leena Pesonen, Dean and Professor of Corporate Environmental Management at the University of Jyväskylä School of Business and Economics. In a moment, I'll pass over to Mark to start his presentation and then following that to start the panel. But before I do, just to remind you that there's a Q&A section at the end of the session. If you've got any questions throughout this session or indeed any of the sessions, just pop them in the question tab and Mark will try and get through as many of these towards the end of the session as he can. For any unanswered questions, don't worry, because we're having another session on Friday this week, that's the 9th of October, where Mark will join us again on a Zoom call to answer all the unanswered questions and many more. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Mark to start the session.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, David. So as David has said, before we start the panel discussion, I just thought it would be useful and spend a few moments talking to you about the ins and outs and the process for joint AMBA and BGA accreditation, so that we all are starting from the same point. So as David said, I'm the Director of Accreditation for AMBA and BGA, and I'm also responsible for the entire BGA product portfolio. So if you're here on this session, I'm going to assume you know quite a bit about AMBA, and most of you will probably be AMBA accredited. So AMBA is the leading MBA business school accreditation body. It's part of the Triple Crown, so one of the 3 most prestigious accreditation bodies in our sector. We've got more than 50 years of expertise in the industry, and we are going to accredit the MBA portfolios at up to 300 of the world's best business schools. We currently are at 280 accredited schools. But you may not know quite so much about Business Graduates Association. So what is BGA? So BGA is AMBA's sister brand, which was launched officially in 2018, leveraging AMBA's long expertise and experience in this sector. And it is also a heritage organisation because BGA was actually AMBA's initial name back when it was formed in 1967. And BGA aims to be the global movement for responsible management, positive impact, and lifelong learning. And to do this, it has established a whole school membership and accreditation system. The 3 core pillars of BGA are responsible management, impact, and lifelong learning. And these 3 elements have been expanded into the 9 points of what we call the BGA Charter. Now, I've put the BGA Charter for you up here on the screen. Essentially, any level of engagement with BGA requires you, your institution, to agree to these 9 principles. And then as you move through the various levels of BGA, you have to provide various varying levels of evidence that you are actually meeting these principles. So we believe that BGA is a really innovative product in what we understand is an ever-growing sector for accreditation and business school memberships. I'll just point out a few of these for you here that are particularly relevant to perhaps an AMBA school thinking about joint accreditation. The first is that we have a really explicit focus on responsible management, and we specifically reference the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals within our processes and within our accreditation criteria. We are impact focused, and this is leveraged through the continuous impact model, which is something that we've designed to demonstrate the way that schools actually can prove their impact on the wider world in their activities. I'd also like to point out the fact that if you are a member of BGA, all of your students can become members of BGA for free. And once you are validated or accredited, and if you go through the joint accreditation process, then your graduates will also be eligible for BGA membership. And those of you that are familiar with the AMBA membership proposition, you will have some idea of the sort of experience and expertise that we can bring to bear in this area. So why should you consider going for a joint accreditation if you're an AMBA accredited school? Well, obviously, this will give you a whole new whole school accreditation to go along with your program-specific accreditation through AMBA. And it will be an accreditation that will demonstrate that you are committed to responsible management, to impact, and to lifelong learning in a way that we don't think any other accreditation body does. And it does this in a time-efficient and cost-efficient way. It is time efficient because the documentation that you would supply for BGA accreditation is reduced if you do it in a joint process. And because it is combined with your AMBA accreditation visit, you do not need to schedule a second visit to take place. And it is cost efficient because you have a 50% reduction in the fee for BGA accreditation that you would have if you had a standalone process. And again, because it is a combined visit, you've only got one assessment team to arrange, one assessment team to pay for, and one set of expenses, hospitality, etc., to arrange. So what is the joint process and how does it operate in terms of the assessment visit itself? Well, it expands the 1.5 day agenda, which is typical for an MBA accreditation, into a full 2-day period. And that extra half a day is essentially given over to looking at a second sample program and to look at a specific session where we consider the school's impact and responsible management processes and procedures and how it demonstrates that it is meeting those specific elements of the BGA accreditation process. Now, I say second sample program. The BGA process usually looks at 2 sample programs as ways of looking at how they are indicative of the way that the school demonstrates the way it's meeting the BGA charter. In a joint accreditation process, the MBA program is taken as the first sample program, and this is the one that would be selected by the school, and BGA would choose the second sample program, and this would normally be a program which is as far removed from the MBA as possible. So in most cases, it would probably be something like an undergraduate program. And then it's also important to point out that in a joint process, you do not have to commit to the full continuous impact model that a solus accreditation for BGA would entail. This normally takes at least 2 years to prepare. So this would be quite an impediment to doing a joint process. But we would expect that you would be able to demonstrate impact metrics in a variety of areas as a way towards developing a continuous impact model in the future. Now, you should obviously have already done some of this work with regards to your MBA program, because demonstrating impact from the MBA is an important part of the AMBA accreditation criteria. So if you could look at expanding that further to perhaps other programs or other areas of the institution, that will stand you in very good stead in terms of meeting this requirement. So I've said that the documentation is reduced for a joint process. Let me talk a little bit about how that works in practice. So you would still need to produce the full AMBA self-assessment form and self-audit report. Again, if you're familiar with AMBA accreditation, you will know what that terminology means. If you're not, please join the other sessions throughout this week that will cover some of these things in more detail. The BGA SAF, the self-assessment form for BGA, you're only required to complete the information regarding the second sample program. So all the information on the institution and the first sample program, which is the MBA, which is covered in the AMBA SAF, is not necessary. You also only have to reference specific elements of the BGA SAR, the self-audit report, and those are the sections there that I've highlighted in this presentation, the areas that we would expect you to complete. Obviously, all this information is available on our website. So how do you initiate the joint process if you're interested in it? And we obviously certainly hope that you will be. Well, the first point is that you have to be a BGA member. Now, if you're already an AMBA school, you're in luck, because currently BGA membership for AMBA schools is completely free. We don't know how much longer we're going to keep this free offer open, but if you are interested and you're not currently a BGA member, we strongly advise you to take this up anyway, as a means to show that you are committed to supporting our vision and our mission. Once you are a BGA member, and you were interested in initiating the joint accreditation process, we would first suggest that you contact your AMBA accreditation director as soon as possible to work out if it's going to be feasible to undertake a joint accreditation at your next AMBA re-accreditation visit. You then have to submit a letter of intent saying that you agree to the terms and conditions of the BGA accreditation, very similar to the AMBA process that you will probably be familiar with. And then obviously to produce the BGA documentation that we've already talked about, and then arrange the visit as per the agenda, again, as I've already discussed. Okay, so I hope that gives you some information about what the BGA joint accreditation is designed to do, what the benefits are for you and your school, and how to undertake it if you're interested in doing so. And we are now going to move into a panel discussion with some of our joint BGA and AMBA accredited schools. I'd like to extend my thanks to Percy and Hanna-Leena for giving up their time to discuss these issues and their thoughts and ideas and best practices with you. And we will now move into that session. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Hanna-Leena and Percy, again for joining me this afternoon, at least this afternoon in UK time. Firstly, can I ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, about your school, and I'm sure everyone will be interested to know something about how you are dealing with the current uncertainties that this COVID pandemic is giving to us all to deal with right now. So, Hanna-Leena, would you mind please starting off?
Thank you, Mark. So good afternoon, everyone from Finland. I'm the Dean of the School of Business and Economics at the University of Jyväskylä, as was told. From my background, I'm a professor in corporate environmental management. So that's sustainability management, especially from environmental sustainability perspective. About the current situation in Finland, when it comes to the COVID-19, we had a very good situation up until just few weeks back, and now we have more and more cases in the past couple of weeks. The whole society was more or less closed last spring. Now the summer was back to almost normal, not totally, but almost. Now we're starting to close up again. The universities are partly open, so we are partly distance working, doing a lot of distance teaching. There are some classes still face-to-face in class at the university, but we will see what happens in the next couple of weeks. In the last half a year with the COVID-19, to me it seems that we've learned now this new way of working. So even if most of the classes now are online, people are the faculty and staff are mostly working from their homes, like myself right now. Things are running, so it's still quite okay, even of course if it's a totally unnormal situation. Good to be here today with all of you.
Very well, thank you very much for that, Hanna-Leena. And Percy, what about your particular situation?
Good morning for everybody. Greetings from Latin America. Good afternoon for you. My name is Percy Marquina. I am a marketing and CSR professor. I am a PhD from Maastricht School of Management, and I am the Dean of CENTRUM Business School since 3 years ago. Right now, the classes are still closed in all the country. The projections are not good. We are assuming that maybe we should restart face-to-face learning maybe on March of the following year. So we continue just driving all classes in a remote or virtual way.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And obviously, we hope things can return to normal as soon as possible, obviously. Both your schools have been long-standing AMBA members, and obviously we're delighted that we've been able to work with you for such a long period of time. What promoted you to work with BGA accreditation alongside your AMBA accreditation? What was perhaps the one thing or one or two things that really made you interested in proceeding?
Maybe Hannah would like to start.
Thank you, Percy. So in our case, it was clearly the responsibility aspect of the BGA. We have a long history of working with sustainability and responsibility issues, both in research, education, and once we got familiar with the BGA and we were preparing for the next reaccreditation visit of AMBA. But that was really what convinced us. We just somehow saw the BGA as the next step to take in terms of responsibility management, also to have a new challenge for ourselves and to get perspective from of course then the peer review team. So for us that was the decisive thing.
Thank you.
Okay. In our case, I should say that there are two aspects that we take into consideration. The first one is similar to what Hannah have said. We have been part of Prime ambassadors and so on. So the opportunity to obtain the BGA accreditation is a way to prove ourselves that we are in a good track, no? And to try to measure if we are doing well or what new opportunities do we have. But to be honest, beside that, we are a Triple Crown business school in Peru, and we are among one of the 10 Triple Crown business schools in Latin America. So when the BGA accreditation was launched, and since a marketing and reputational point of view, we cannot be, we have to be one of the entrepreneurs and the pioneers that have to be proved that we have to remain, I don't know if we can say the fourth accreditation on the really Triple Crown accreditation. So it's a way to show that we still are a very good business school in Peru. So we need to do it and to be one of the first ones to do that.
Great, thank you, Percy. And perhaps could you tell us a little bit about in terms of obviously the additional preparation that you had to undertake for the joint visit, what additional information did you need to provide for the BGA part of the accreditation? What things did you have to do in addition in terms of before the visit itself happened?
Percy, would you like to go first now?
Oh,
okay,
Percy,
thank you very much. Okay. Well, in our case, this year, before COVID, it was forecast that it would be a very complicated year because during this year, we have to be reaccredited by our 3 accreditation bodies. So we start thinking that we are going to make all the documentation for AACSB, for EPIS, and for AMBA. And when we were scheduling and preparing all this documentation, we know that AMBA launched the new accreditation, and we evaluate inside if we are ready or not to do it. We were very nervous in some sense because we don't know in that very moment which are the specific requirements. But well, we decided to do. What I would say is that maybe for us, because we do have other institutional accreditation, it was not so complicated, but maybe the more particular concrete complication for us is the impact model, because BGA is asking us to try to prove and show the materiality of the relevance of our impact, and we are still working on it. I mean, we know that as this was our first BGA accreditation, we understand, okay, you have the minimum requirement, but this is a continuous improvement. And by sure, in the next opportunity, the requirements is going to be higher. So we are still working on it. I mean, the BGA give us the opportunity to review and to ask ourselves, how can we measure, how can we report that? That's what's the, let's say, the more complicated area for us.
Sure. Thank you, Percy. That's very helpful. Hanna-Leena, any perspectives you want to add?
In our case, we if I start from the responsibility perspective, so we had a lot of different documents and which we had been using for different purposes. So we had a lot of things already there, but collecting all of that together, sort of writing the whole story about what had been done, what the plans were, where we were at that very point of time with the responsibility management and research and all of that. That required, of course, some work. And then just what Percy was talking about, the impact issue, we also do, because of other accreditations that we have, AMBA and then the AACSB. So we do compile an impact report annually. So we already had something for there too, but then we had to kind of organize it, and that's, I would put it positively. So it gave us an opportunity to reorganize what we had done in terms of impact as well. So it was really a learning process, and getting a new perspective into that too. That's still a work in progress, I have to say. And the continuous impact model was not there yet. Once we were preparing the material, let me see, that was the summer a year ago, so 2019. The visit was in early December last year, so we were preparing the documents in summer and then early autumn 2019. So the SIM model was not there yet, but we of course had the other documents to give us some guidance already about where the BGA would go with the impact. Plus then of course the second sample program, collecting the information for that one was of course then also some extra work. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm pleased you both talked about the continuous impact model there, because obviously that is sort of the key continuous impact element of the BGA process. I mean, obviously the whole accreditation process should be designed, and any good accreditation process should be designed to help a business school improve. But the continuous impact model is obviously our particular way of trying to filter that into something that not only helps you provide a roadmap to improve, but also provides you with something at the end of it that you can really say, you know, this demonstrates our impact in a very concrete way. And so I'm really pleased that you both talked about that, and that wasn't set up at all. So that's great to hear you talk about that naturally. And how did you feel thinking about the assessment visit itself? How did you feel it differed from from your previous only AMBA accreditation visits? I mean, obviously there's the extra half a day, the time is different, but was there anything that felt different? Was there anything to you that you'd want to share with the people who are listening to this this conversation about how it was different, and how you dealt with any of those challenges that came up? Hanna-Leena, would you like to start?
Thank you. What I would say that was definitely gave a new flavor to the visit was the fact that there was the second sample program. In our case, we chose a Master of Science program in Sustainability Management. So we wanted to showcase that because of obvious reasons for the BGA. Somehow we thought that would be appropriate, and bringing those students also into the interviews and along the MBA students, that gave it somehow a different flavor, talking to those Master of Science students. Typically, in our case, because our MBA is an executive MBA, so the Master of Science students would be younger, they would be studying full time, etc., etc. And then I have to come back to the responsibility and impact issues. So they somehow were, I would say they were going through all the sessions. So they were aspects which were raised in more or less every session throughout the whole visit and all the interviews. So that's different in a way. Yeah.
Well, from our perspective, and I am not sure it is because we moved from the AMBA to the BGA, or it's because of the personality of the peer review team members. But what I can share is that in the past, we feel that the AMBA accreditation is more operational perspective. I mean, it's related to the program, to functional aspects. But in the case of the BGA, it was more helpful, more useful for us, because the peer review team members have a holistic perspective and ask and make questions and suggestions in a strategic perspective. And for us, it was very, very useful, very productive to have very clever people showing us new opportunities. We feel that it's more a coaching process that an audit process. Is what we experience. I am not be able to generalize it, but it's what we feel. So we feel that BGA is more strategic and more coach-oriented process.
That's great. That's certainly what we pride ourselves on, is that the BGA is a really consultative accreditation, and AMBA as well. I have to say that we really do hope to provide a school with quite a lot of ideas and new ways of thinking about things. Not all of them can be put into practice, because obviously your schools and your contexts better than any visiting assessment team can do. But hopefully some different perspectives can be useful in that regard. And so what would your message be to schools, AMBA accredited schools who are listening, who might be considering joint accreditation? What would you say to them?
Well, I would start. I should say that it depends in which is the step of the business school in terms of accreditation. If the business school have only has in the past the AMBA accreditation, they must to be sure that they have enough time to prepare all the institutional documentation and to review previously all his administrative and strategic planning process. No? Because in some sense, the BGA is a mission-driven orientation. No, not only the program, but the total institution. Saying that, if the business school have any other institutional accreditation, it should be easy to move from AMBA to BGA, because in some sense you have done something similar to other boards, and you have to check which is the requirement of each one, and if you have any particular gap. So it depends on the context of each particular business school. But in both cases, I should recommend that if you only have AMBA, move as soon as you can to BGA 2, because it's economically preferable. It's a little bit cost behind. It's more easy process in this stage, no? Because they are launching it globally. I should say it's the right moment to try to move there. No, maybe in the near future is going to be a little bit more complicated, but choose the opportunity. It was our case. It was our experience.
Thank you, Percy. And Hanna-Leena, anything you want to add?
Not really too much. I have to say I agree with Percy. I would say, just if you're interested in, or if you're considering the BGA and you have an AMBA accreditation coming up, so think about, go for it. Think about the opportunity, you certainly save some time, some work with it. But still remember, just as Percy said, especially if this is your first whole school accreditation, it will anyhow need quite some amount of work to be done. But overall, I think it's a great opportunity for those schools with the AMBA accreditation. Then it really saves you some time, some work.
Great, thank you. And could I ask you possibly to say something about how you have been able to leverage your BGA accreditation? You know, how have you been able to use that as something which has you know, enhanced your school, promoted your school? You know, how have you been able to use the BGA accreditation, either internally or externally, in a positive way?
Well, as a marketing professor and director of the institution, we decided to use to promote our brand. No, as we are the first business school in Peru which obtained the BGA accreditation, we launched a campaign mentioning that we are the first business school in Peru and the second one in Latin America. So for a while, it was a very useful campaign, and we are evaluating and waiting because, as I mentioned before, we have this year the 3 visits of three different accreditation bodies. We have been re-accredited by AMBA and now by BGA and by ACSB. But in the following 2 weeks, we are going to receive the EQUIS visit. So after and hoping that we be re-accredited by EQUIS, we are asking us if we are going to say if we are a triple crown or if we are a 4th crowned business school. We are evaluating that, but well, in that sense, maybe we would ask Mark to suggest something about it, no? Because we don't want to do it alone and then we're having some international issues, no? But for a marketing perspective, it's a convalidation of the quality that we are offering. So since a marketing perspective, it was very, very useful.
Great, thank you, Percy. And Hanna-Leena, is there anything you want to add?
I might add something from the, because Mark, you also mentioned the internal sort of benefits. Yeah. So something about that. In our case, I think it was also a proof, I hope also for externally, but then also for the faculty, staff and the students ourselves, a sign, a proof about the work that we have been doing, especially in the area of responsibility, that we are really one of the pioneers. We had some other sort of prizes and awards we have been receiving from that area some time ago, but this was again to sort of highlight the fact that we are really one of the first in the area. Externally, I find it a bit more difficult to say, at least not yet, at least not so far, to say about the impact of the BGA accreditation. Certainly, it's a proof along together with the other accreditations that we have of the quality of the school as a whole. But it's a bit more difficult then to pinpoint somehow a separate impact of the BGA from the whole.
Sure. No, that's great. Thank you. Well, thank you both very much for answering all my questions. We've got lots of questions here coming in. Some of them are of a sort of more technical nature, so I will try and get through those quite quickly, and then hopefully we'll have some of the sort of the sort of broader discussion questions that we can bring you all in on if that's okay. So first technical question: can a school go for BGA accreditation if it does not have undergraduate programs? Yes, absolutely. I said that we choose a program ideally as far away from the MBA as possible, and an example of that would be an undergraduate program. But obviously, if you don't have undergraduate programs, we would look at a second sample program. I suppose the only issue is if you don't have any other programs other than the MBA, that might be a separate issue that we'd have to think about. But yes, absolutely. The second sample program does not have to be an undergraduate program. That's just a good example of the type of program that we would like to choose. Second question is there a difference in the peer review panel for a joint BGA AMBA accreditation as there would be for an AMBA accreditation? Not necessarily, but we would obviously need to choose the team to make sure that all the bases are covered. So, for example, again, go back to the undergraduate program example, we need to make sure at least one of the assessors would have quite a strong understanding of undergraduate programs and running undergraduate programs if that was the second sample program. So we would choose the peer review team with the joint accreditation in mind, but it would not be, the team would not be different and would not necessarily need a different composition than you would normally have for your AMBA accreditation. And it certainly wouldn't be any larger, it would be the same size team you would have for your AMBA accreditation. Someone's asked if it's possible to have, as an AMBA school, to have a BGA visit separately. Yes, it is a possibility, but obviously then you will not get the economies of scale that we've talked about in terms of cost and time saving. So yes, it is possible if you wish to do so, but it might not be so efficient to do that. And another question is, does the length of BGA accreditation last the same as the AMBA accreditation? Yes, the periods are coterminous, so the combined length of accreditation would be as long as the weakest part of the accreditation, I suppose. So obviously, in an ideal world, both would be for a full 5-year period. But if one of those was weaker and could not be granted for a full 5-year term, then both would be the shorter term. Okay, so now if I can ask some questions to you both again that are coming in from our audience. First question, I think we've covered this partly, but there might be an additional perspective you can add to this. What are the main focus areas of BGA that you found particularly useful?
I should say the CSR or environmental issues. We feel that this accreditation is more focused in SDGs, in sustainable management efforts, and it helps us a lot, and we are still working, thinking in the next visit, how to have a more concrete, tangible impact model. So we have decided recently to change the projects that our students develops in our programs. So just to give you an example, more or less our idea is, if we are going to report in the following years an impact, the most important impact should be through research and through the projects of our students. So if we can identify a way to have a concrete impact for each project, if we add all those projects, we then should have the total impact of the business school. So in that sense, we have recently decided that all the theses or final projects for all our postgraduate studies should be social entrepreneurship projects. And the student should have to prove not only the return over the investment for the shareholders, but moreover, which is the social impact or which is the concrete benefit from the stakeholders. Now we are trying to develop a concrete metrics of this particular issue. So that's more or less which was our experience on it.
Thank you, Percy. Hanna-Leena, anything to add?
May I first comment on Percy? That's a wonderful idea what you're doing with the thesis projects of the students. I'm really impressed about the idea for that. But then to the question, I more or less already commented on the fact that for us it was really the impact and the responsibility, but the reasons to go for the BGA. Yeah, so nothing really to add to that one.
Okay, thank you. A question that relevant to both of you, given your school status. And this is given that AACSB has a dedicated standard on sustainability in their accreditation standards. I think the new ones that are being published now. How do you think BGA accreditation will add value to an already double crown or triple crown school? I have my own response to this, but I'll leave it to you two to.
Yes, it's totally true that the standards of AACSB have been recently changed and published, and it has been included a CSR aspect. But I feel that AMBA and BGA is a little bit forward in this social warning or concern. So what I can say is that the BGA accreditation help us a lot to be prepared for the CSB answer of this aspect. So if you have not been accredited previously, or are you going to be reaccredited under the new standard of AACSB, our experience was that BGA prepared us very well for that particular standard.
Thank you. Let's see. What about you, Hanna-Leena? You had anything to add on that?
No, not really. No, now that the AACSB standards have added the sustainability there as an aspect, of course brings it closer. But I agree with Percy that in the BGA the responsibility aspect seems to be stronger. It's really one of the key topics. So.
Yeah, no, thank you. And that's certainly my certainly what we've tried to do is position it really as, I mean, there are the three core pillars of which responsible management is one of them, but responsible management is the first one in that list, I suppose, for a reason. Is that it really is the I guess if there is one of the three that's the founding pillar, that would be the one that we would choose. So it really is central to everything that BGA really does, and so even the impact part has to have an element of the way in which the impact is within the field of responsible management and sustainability, as well as all the other areas of things like salary changes and employability and all those sorts of things that you could use as well. So everything comes back to responsible management in the BGA process. Just to read the next question that's come in, it says that Hannah mentioned the value of BGA internally. How has BGA accreditation been received from your school or from the wider university, and how has it helped? Hanna-Leena, are you happy to take that one first?
Yes. So from the faculty and staff, for the faculty and staff of the business school, it was clearly a very good news for them. Like I said, a further sign of the work that we all had been doing for a long time. The same is true for the students as well. They seem to appreciate it. We are part of a larger university, so also the university as a whole actually has responsibility and sustainability as one of the core issues and the focus areas in research, for instance. So this also fits very well with the strategy of the whole university. So we have certainly been noted, and the BGA accreditation has been noted at the whole university, with the rector in the discussions I have with the rector of the university, etc. So yeah, maybe that's to add to what I said earlier.
Thank you. No, that's very helpful. And Percy, anything to add from your perspective?
Yes, since internal perspective, the BGA help us to show the faculty the important to have a change of the mindset. Maybe the professors from economic or marketing are the more complicated to convince to move to a more sustainable approach. But having these guidelines, having these questions and asking for the reports, make them aware of the important, and this is going to be a global trend, and they cannot stay, let's say, in the past. They must have to help us to move the wheel. So it helped us to try to convince the faculty of the importance to change their mindset.
That's great, thank you. And the next question, I mean, to be honest, I think Percy, you pretty much answered this already, but I'll ask it anyway, and there might be something you want to add. And the question is it possible to successfully use the Triple Crown plus BGA as a marketing tool?
Well, as I have mentioned before, we are asking us if we can do it. I mean, we would like to do, but we cannot be the only one, because if we are the only one, it's not trustable. So that's the tricky question, no? But let's say in a nationwide local campaign, it should be great, and we are going to do it. But for our international recruitment, we are asking ourselves if it's trustable to say that. So maybe you can advise us, Mark. What would you imagine should be better?
Well, I mean, it's a very good question. I know that David will be chomping at the bit to come in here from his perspective, as well as the Director of Marketing and Communications at AMBA and BGA. So I know it's something that we are working on as well. Hanna-Leena, did you want to add anything to that?
Not really. We have AMBA, AACSB, and now BGA accreditation. So we don't have the EQUIS. So, well, someone from our faculty actually, once we got the BGA accreditation, which was the third, said that, well, can we now call ourselves as triple accredited? Or triple crown. Well, we are triple accredited. That's true now. yeah. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay. A slightly more technical question for you both. Someone's asking you just to share, if you don't mind, what the time frame was for gaining BGA accreditation. You know, from the initial conversation that you had with AMBA and BGA until it was endorsed.
Well, in our case, it was not so complicated, and I should say that it takes us, let's say, 3 months of additional workload, but it was because, as I mentioned before, we have all the documentation for 3 different accreditations. That's the reason why we just need to make a cross-check and be sure that there is nothing missing. But what I would suggest, if this is your first move from a programmatic accreditation to an institutional accreditation, and depending how well have you make your own internal reports, I should say that maybe not less than a year, depending on how well you have all the materiality to show to the accreditation board.
Thank you. And Hanna-Leena, what was your story?
In our case, I was trying to think back. It was actually in Istanbul, the AMBA Deans and Directors Conference in May 2019, where I was attending the conference, and where I actually made the decision to talk to this about our management board to see what they think about it. BGA was all new by that time, and so we made the decision before the summer break to go for it. And by that time, we already knew that we would have the reaccreditation of AMBA coming up in that was the first days of December last year, so very early December. So basically, it was half a year from Istanbul. And in Istanbul, I think I had the first very short talk with you, Mark, for instance.
Yes.
And that's where we started. So half a year. Or then actually we started working with the documents after the summer break. So just like Percy said, 4 months, something like that. In our case, we had the AACSB peer review team visit a year before this one. So we had documentation to use, which was still pretty well up to date. So that helped us a lot. So I would also give a time frame of about a year, maybe a bit more, if you don't have any whole school accreditation to start with. Yeah, sounds.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I mean, yeah, thank you, Hanna-Leena. Yes, I mean the joint process is designed to be, you know, the whole reason that we're doing this and making it, you know, time efficient is to enable you to do it within a fairly short time frame. But obviously, the more time that you have, the better, and the better prepared that you will be. So, you know, yes, if you have an AMBA reaccreditation coming up in 6 months' time, you know, you're going to have to throw a lot of resources into it to get the BGA joint accreditation, but it is entirely possible to do that. You just have to be prepared for the work required. But obviously, if you can plan it to a longer time scale, you're going to be better prepared for achieving it, of course.
Yes.
I'm just looking through the list of questions here. Just there's a few more technical ones coming in, but I want to just try and deal with the wider ones first. If we've got any more coming in. No. Okay. So yes. Okay. So you've both mentioned sustainability. In your experience, are students coming to business schools with an increased interest in sustainability? And if so, can BGA support this potential type of students? That's a really great question. Thank you for that, whoever asked that one. Who would like to take that first?
Well, we make many market research in order to review the curriculum of the programs and also to prepare our marketing campaigns. We only have postgraduate studies, and the average age of our student is almost between 30 to 35 years old. And what we can identify is that the difference in terms of the expectations of the students right now compared with the average student of 5 years ago is totally different. So they are, and also let me say that we are in a very inequality continent, and we have a lot of social issues here in Latin America. So let's say the awareness of the coming students, the terms sustainability, ethics, and CSR issues are in the DNA of what they are expecting right now. No, and maybe after COVID, the requirement should be higher. No, this pandemic have shown us that many things that we were teaching and we were developing was not enough. So I would say we cannot, we have to think in terms of advance, what are going to be the expectation for the future students. Right now, by sure, they request that, but I am sure that they will press and push us a lot more in the following years.
Great, thank you for that. And Hanna-Leena, anything you'd like to add? I mean, I'm sure you have some positive perspectives on that, given your focus that you talked about on sustainability and responsible management as well.
Yeah. Yes. So if students are more expectations about sustainability, in our case, absolutely yes, definitely yes. We have. That's what we are known for in Finland, for instance, among the Finnish business schools. That's the profile we have. We were one of the very first universities, even globally, one of the pioneers having programs incorporating environmental management, a master's program and a doctoral program in that area. So that's something we have been known for among the students who have been interested in sustainability for quite a long time already. And to me, it seems that more and more students actually share the interest. If they want to concentrate on these issues, like for instance in our very specific program, that's another issue. But we do offer those contents and some basics to all of our students. So that's a profiling issue for us.
Great, thank you. Another question: has BGA helped create some partnerships or opened up some new avenues that maybe AMBA accreditation has not been able to? Have you been able to leverage it in a way to do that? I suppose it's relatively new for both of you, so it's quite possible that might not be the case at this point in time. I suppose, and if not, how do you think it might be able to open up new opportunities?
No, I mean, I cannot say that. We have not evaluated, and as we have other accreditations together, it's not possible for me to try to identify the specific impact of
Sure.
this particular accreditation. Sorry.
In our case, actually, something which probably falls into the category of new opportunities for us. Now we are in cooperation with AMBA and BGA about a certain research. So that's something, of course, then in the area of responsibility, something a door which probably was open because, or at least partly because of the BGA accreditation as well. So that's something. I can't think of anything else particular either at the very moment, which is partly probably I would say because of the COVID situation. Everyone has been so somehow turned inside in a way. We all have been focused on running the everyday life, changing everything into remote and all of that. So if we ever go back to something which was called normal a year ago, then it would be easier to of course having contacts with people, meeting people, and then it's easier to say what it brings.
Yeah, of course, absolutely, and yes, it's difficult times for pretty much everyone wherever you are in the world at the moment to try and think, you know, broader than just making sure you know everyone is staying safe and well, obviously, as the major priority. Just to say to everyone who's listening and sending in questions, we're getting loads of technical questions coming in now, so I'm sorry, I'm just not going to have time to get round to all of those or any more of those, I don't think, in this session now. But please do send me an email or get in touch with me. All my contact details are available, I'm sure, through this session and through our website, and I will be very happy to answer them all very promptly for you. Just as I think probably a final question for you both, you know, do you think it is the role of accreditation bodies to ensure that business schools are working to a best practice in terms of sustainability? Or if I could put that in another way, do you think that accreditation bodies you know, have a positive role to play in ensuring that we are all working towards you know, sustainability, responsible management, and best practice in that area?
I should say that the accreditation institutions has a very important role to play, because in some sense the requirements that they choose to look for the accreditations is going to make an stimulus for all the system to move forward, and as faster you move, faster you should impact in our decisions. So that's the main issue, and unfortunately together as a system we have not made enough. I mean, we need to do more and more and more rapidly, because this PUCP environmental context that we are living requires from all of us more concrete and impactful decisions. So the role is totally important, more important than maybe you are expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic, thank you. Hanna-Leena, anything to add?
I absolutely agree. I was thinking about setting a bar and then then actually raising it, of course, continuous improvement, and then that becomes a benchmark when the first ones have gone over the bar, so to say. So that becomes the benchmark then for the other schools, which they at some point do have to follow. So very important role for the accreditation bodies.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for your valuable input into this session. It's been great talking to you both, and thank you for giving up your time to share your thoughts with me and also with our audience. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much to everyone who has watched this webinar, and obviously everyone's been really engaged with it because they've been sending in a ton of questions that we haven't got around to getting to all today. So I apologise for that. But thank you so much for your attention and for your engagement with this session. And I will just pass back to David for the formalities to close us out.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you, Percy and Hannah. That was a fantastic session. And yeah, just to echo what Mark said, and just to remind you all that on Friday, we will be having a more detailed question and answer session to go through all the unanswered questions from the conference. So you'll have details about that in your joining instructions. So we look forward to following up with you then. As Mark mentioned, unfortunately, that's all we have time for this particular session. But there's another session in 30 minutes. That's at 3:30 p.m. BST with Paul Millett from Peregrine Global Services, who will be explaining why online and hybrid instruction are here to stay. Just to remind you all that for all the sessions taking place on GoToWebinar, you will receive emails from AMBA and BGA with your exclusive link to join the session. These should be sent a day before and an hour before the session takes place to remind you of the link needed to join the session. So all that remains for me to say is thank you once again to Mark, Percy and Hannah, and I look forward to seeing you all in half an hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. See you.